and thanks for joining us from Twitter, Periscope, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. If you have a question or comment along the way, make sure you write it below. We'll try to fit it in. Tina, do you want to start with you?
Sure. So for those who haven't met me before, I'm Tina from Melbourne, Australia. So talking to you guys in Hiroshima today. And I run a group called WheelWoman Cycling, and it's all about getting women on their bikes and getting them comfortable with, how to use their bikes and to improve their fitness and basically just to get women active. And I've been cycling in Japan for I don't know how long now, 7 years. And I've done, maybe 8 or 9 trips along the Shimanami Kaido, and I just love it so much.
That's awesome.
So that's me.
Paul, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Paul. I'm a co-founder with Joy of GetHiroshima.com, and I run a little boutique tourism consulting service called JizoHat. And one of the things that we work with at JizoHat is helping Shimanami Kaido get the word out about how great a destination it is, mostly through social media. I've also been cycling for quite a long time. I don't have a driving license, so for me, it's always been a way of getting around and seeing all the great stuff in Japan. So that's thanks to Japan, I discovered cycling, so I'm really grateful about that.
That's great. And Tina, it looks like, should we start with your photos in Ehime? So last time we were talking about the Onomichi, Hiroshima side of the Shimanami Kaido, right? This time we're going to focus more on the Ehime side.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah?
So, I'm not sure what photos you were going to put up, but there was a lot that I sent through to you. I think what's interesting is a lot of people really focus on the Onomichi side of the Shimanami Kaido, and I guess that's kind of the main entry point for a lot of people because they get to, obviously a lot of people will enter in Tokyo and then head to Kyoto or Osaka, then to Hiroshima, so Onomichi is not too far away. I don't think as many people certainly would be starting at the Imagari end, which of course is Ehime Prefecture. But as you ride along the Shimanami, there is a definitive line on one of those bridges that says Hiroshima Prefecture one side, Ehime the other. So not many people notice it, which is kind of a shame. And I think probably Hiroshima Prefecture gets lots of the rah-rah about the Shimanami Kaido, and Ehime is left behind a little bit. But I think the prefectural government there is working really hard to promote the Ehime end, and they certainly have some amazing places on the Ehime end that...
There are pictures of Mount Kiro-san right now?
Yes. Now, Mount Kiro-san, we talked about this in our last session, but for those people who think that Shimanami might just be a kind of beginner's ride, well, there are places like Mount Kiro-san that provide a nice climb for those who want it. It averages around 10% for most of the way. I think it's probably, it's 5 or 6 Ks long from the main start of the climb. You've still got to get to the main start of the climb before that, which is probably another 2 or 3 Ks. And it offers some absolutely spectacular views along the way. And of course, for people like me who, I always say I really don't like hill climbing very much, there's always a really great, few places along the way that you can use that excuse of, I'm just stopping to look at the view. So you can take a bit of a break along the way. And of course, at the top, there's this amazing lookout structure by Japanese architect Kengo Kuma. And it's got that kind of classic modern Japan style of pre-poured concrete. It's really quite spectacular.
Anything to add there on Mount Kiro-san, Paul?
Yeah, I like the way you described it as a nice climb. It is a real climb, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And I love climbing, but I have to admit, the last time I tackled it, I did halfway up, I took my bags off the back of the bike and hid them in behind a tree to help me get up there. And yeah, those little view sections where they like built into the side of the road along the way before you hit the top are really welcome, right?
Yeah, they sure are.
Yeah. And there's a little cafe kind of place at the top, right? We can get ice cream and stuff as well. So that's
yes,
get a drink and stuff. That's kind of nice, yeah.
Yeah,
so, yeah, the views are incredible.
And I didn't know that the name Kurosan means old turtle, I think. So yeah, there's a statue of an old turtle up there, which is very gorgeous. So it's kind of a sage reminder for those of us who are not hill climbers. You know, it's okay to be a turtle sometimes.
It is one of those that's really worth the effort, though, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You know, the view at the top is absolutely spectacular, and it looks out across the Kuroshima Strait and the bridge, of course, and you get the most wonderful view across a lot of the islands, but it's almost like a 360-degree view from Kurosan. It's wonderful. Definitely worth it.
Okay, great. Do you
and
want
it's
to...
also drivable, right, as well, if you're
yes,
not
it is. Yeah.
Looks gorgeous. Should we continue to Matsuyama Castle? Your photos there?
Sure. So Matsuyama Castle is, I believe it's one of, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's one of the few castles remaining in Japan that hasn't been rebuilt. It's actually the original castle that was there, gosh, many years ago. I've forgotten, is it 1600s or something, I think. And it really, there's a couple of my friends getting dressed up as samurai, crazy girls. So it's a really beautiful castle, and it has amazing grounds. And I think the one thing that's astonished me about that castle is the amazing woodwork. As soon as you enter the gates through to the castle, there's usually, in Japanese castles, there's usually several gates that you have to enter to get into the main section. And the sizes of the logs and the wood that they use is just awe-inspiring. But it's a really neat place. You can ride there and have a wander around the castle grounds. And there's always, every time I've been there, there's been some people doing cosplay in the grounds, which is pretty cool too.
Nice. Anything to add, Paul?
Yeah, Matsuyama's a great place, and it's an excellent extension to a Shimanami trip. I think it's well worth, if you have the time and the energy, it's well worth moving on to Matsuyama if you can. Did you when you went? Did you cycle along the coast?
Yeah, so we've done that a couple of times, and for those interested, it's from Imabari. It's around 50 k's the route by bike. There's a couple of sections in the first part as you leave Imabari, which are pretty busy, trafficked, bit industrial, perhaps lots of shopping centres. But once you get past that and you can get yourself onto the coast road, it's really gorgeous riding. And the neat part about it is a lot of it tends to ride along, I guess, the tsunami walls that they've put up, and you're sitting right on the top of that, right on the coast, and then they'll dart back in, to cross a little waterway. And when you do that, you're actually riding amongst people's houses and getting a real feel for the neighbourhoods in the area. And a lot of people will stop and chat to you when they see you riding your bikes, and that's certainly what's happened to us every time we've done it. And even though they say follow the blue line, there's no blue line when you ride from Imabari to Matsuyama. You just have to find your way. So I've managed to get us lost several times along there, but it's mainly through the neighbourhoods of people's houses. But and also there's some really interesting things there. There's a huge solar park that was apparently powering most of the area where we were. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, cool things to see on that route. I really love that ride. It's a pretty easy ride. It's flat basically the whole way. The only time it's a little bit hectic is when you get into the city of Matsuyama, trying to find your way through the safest route with lots of traffic and trams and everything to contend with.
Mary
route
is
really
Mary is saying, "Oh my gosh, gorgeous." Sean is saying, "Gotta get back there." Thanks for joining, guys. Tina, you also talked about the pearl, seeing some pearls in Matsuyama.
Yeah, so if you go further south from Matsuyama and head down to Uejima, there's a really great pearling area there, and we kind of happened upon it by chance and saw all these oyster beds out in the water, and then we started noticing people just with their little sheds on the shore shelling the oysters, and then of course realised there were a whole lot of pearl places along the way, and we called into one, and you can actually see these incredible strings of pearls worth thousands and thousands of dollars, and they're just all sitting there on the shelf. And but then if you want to buy some, they just bring out these boxes of pearls of different levels of, I guess, quality, and you can pick which ones you want to put into earrings or a necklace or a piece of jewelry, and they'll usually just make it for you there and then. It's really cool, and it's a whole lot cheaper than buying them in the shops.
That's great. There was also a cycle festa that you introduced.
Yeah, so we happened to be there one time at Matsuyama Castle, and there was a cycling festival. We didn't really know too much about what was going on. We happened to be on a tour when we were riding our Bromptons that time, so we felt a little bit out of place with all these road bikes there. But what they were doing really impressed me, because they had kids out there teaching the kids all these cycling skills, and they had them going over little jumps and then teaching them how to use their hands to signal. And it looked like they had a few sort of time trial contests on really short routes, and this is all happening in the castle, below the castle grounds, in a park area there. It was fabulous to watch, and we were so excited to see it, because it was kind of like this feeling that the Onomichi end has always been, the cycling mecca, and then to suddenly get down to Matsuyama and see all this cycling activity was just the coolest thing ever. It was great.
Yeah, I think, as you were saying earlier, like Onomichi and the Hiroshima side often gets a lot of the attention in terms of cycling, but like you've been saying, I've been really impressed with the efforts that Ehime Prefecture in particular has been putting into building up a cycling culture there and focusing quite a lot on everything from kids, but right up to quite a lot of trying to encourage people to do more challenging, longer road cycling, as well as just pottering around, I think.
Yeah, and I think the local, the Ehime prefectural government is really putting in place some really nice infrastructure for cyclists too. I noticed they put in a new cycle station at Imabari for cyclists as soon as they arrive there. So, there's great facilities there that are really starting to pick up, and Onomichi better watch out, because there's some cool stuff happening on the other end.
Well, let's talk about Imabari next, since you mentioned it. Go ahead. Tell us about Imabari.
Imabari is a funny place, Just when I went there, I thought, what's here? There didn't seem to be much happening. And then, it was kind of one of those things where I thought, I don't know whether I go back to Imabari. But actually, the more I went there, the more I discovered about it. It was kind of interesting. And it takes a little bit of time to find those places and start exploring the back streets, and also just getting on your bike and riding along the coast for a little bit too, and exploring along that route that goes along the waterfront from the port. It's quite pretty to see, but it shows what an incredibly industrial town the area was. And I think that's it's real evidence of a town which had incredible industry from shipbuilding and lots of other things, I'm sure, but shipbuilding seemed to be the thing that stuck out for me. But it's kind of fallen into decline, I guess, as the younger generation move away, and like Onomichi, you see lots of places closed up and shops with the shutters down, and you kind of wonder what the future will be. But over the years when I've been visiting, every so often you see a new place popping up and you think, yeah, maybe this is headed in the same direction. And that's really nice to see that, because I think Imabari is really a gateway to so much on Shikoku, particularly that whole area heading down to Matsuyama. So Imabari, of course, is also famous for the Imabari towel factory. It's so interesting about towels. But actually, they are really interesting. I have never seen towels so beautiful in my life. And they have these extraordinary shops that are so beautifully designed, and so much care and attention to the detail in their, point of purchase and displays. It's really fabulous to see it. So definitely worth a visit to Imabari Towel Factory.
Have you visited the Towel Museum?
No, I haven't been there.
Right, okay, so that's,
the shops.
you still have that to look forward to. That's quite interesting. I think it's about 7 floors of towel. There's a lot of opportunities to purchase towels, and then once you get at the top, there's kind of a museum and some interesting, very I don't know if they're cute or strange, like dioramas and stuff, all made out of toweling material. But some of the displays of the thread and some of the you can see some of the, I guess it's weaving, some of the work going on. It's pretty interesting.
We have a few questions, comments. Alicia says, if the Onomichi end is the area that cyclists concentrate on, does this mean the Imabari end is quieter?
I think it's definitely quieter. Definitely when you're trying to stay in Imabari, it can be a little bit of a challenge to find some places that you think might be suitable. There's a couple of really cool ones. Cyclo, you mentioned it last week, Cyclo, no, yeah, yeah, I've never stayed in that one. I've been lucky enough to stay in the very amazing Imabari Kokusai Hotel.
Right,
which
yeah,
is
that's
really huge international hotel. Few and far between.
Yeah, the Cyclo no Ie is a great place for getting information, connecting with other local cyclists and stuff. But it is a hostel, so if you're looking for something more hotel-y, there's a Kokusai Hotel, of course, which is higher end. But there's a few business hotels. But as Tina says, accommodation options are a little limited in the city centre.
Yeah, and the business hotels are quite different to the Kokusai Hotel. They're very minimal kind of accommodation.
Yeah.
Sean has a question. Sean Diaz, thanks for the questions and comments so far, guys. Imabari has slowly built up. They hide their amazing roots, cafes, and history.
Yeah, I mean, Imabari, one thing I love about Imabari is all there's some great old style kisaten coffee shops. I love popping into those. There's a couple near the port that are open from 5 in the morning. So you can get your Japanese style morning set breakfast from 5 a.m. I guess for the people who used to work in the shipyards and the people in the fishing industry.
It looks like Tina's introducing some Imabari chicken.
So Imabari, of course, has their own mascot, which is Bari-chan, and that's Bari-chan, the chicken. And so Imabari is famous for its chicken, and wherever you go, you can find a chicken meal. And so you've got to like chicken when you go to Imabari, that's for sure. But all kinds of different chicken places, and some. There's a couple I know of in the main drag in Imabari that have the best atmosphere, with them cooking the chicken in front of you, and the chefs all yelling out to each other, and they're real highs of activity, and obviously really central to the community there. Great fun.
That's awesome.
The other thing about Imabari is that a lot of people will travel to Imabari from Onomichi and rent their bikes and ride back to Onomichi, because a lot of the Shimanami Kaido is relatively flat, and I do say relatively because there tend to be more hills than perhaps people expect, and the tougher hills tend to be on the Imabari side. Mm-hmm. So you can knock those hills off before you're getting tired, type thing. So that's something that people do and something to think about. And then they have this great new cycle terminal at Imabari Station with showers and great bikes to rent. They have a bunch of new giant bikes, and they've increased their number of large frame bikes. So I think they can accommodate up to about 190 centimeters in height now, which is a nice improvement.
Now, Tina, it looks like next you want to mention the Ikidane Cyclist Hostel. Is that
so
nearby?
That's a little bit, that's a little bit further back on Oshima. Yeah, Oshima. And it's a new hostel. I was lucky enough to stay in last year, and we did mention it briefly last time we spoke. It's run by some young people, and it has a very lovely bar and restaurant there. Restaurant being, kind of cafe style, very informal, and the rooms themselves, it's like one long corridor, and each room is cordoned off with a big curtain. And they're kind of minimal rooms, but they're really stylishly done, and it's very comfortable accommodation. So you can have a room for one person or two people, and the two people rooms are actually a bunk bed, but very luxurious bunk beds. And all of the showering and toilet facilities, of course, are shared dorm style, so women's and men's, of course. And I really love the atmosphere there, and sitting outside when you've had a long day of cycling at the Ikidane Hostel is really a lovely place. And as you mentioned, Paul, a great convenience store across the road that has the best selection of champagne of any convenience store I've ever found in Japan, strangely enough.
And then it looks like you also stayed in Hakata. Do you want to introduce that?
Yeah, so previously when I've been over with a group, we've stayed at Hakata in a small, and I remember speaking to the owner who told me his family has only ever run this ryokan. That's his family business. So as long as he can remember, I seem to remember a figure of like 180 years that he can remember his family having run his business. And it's very traditional, tatami mats, and then you have a bath in the onsen there, and he serves up an incredible seafood feast of local specialties, which he said he gets the fish from the fishermen each day because he's right near the port. So it's definitely worth the experience of staying somewhere like that. Hakata's kind of a small island. There's probably not a huge amount of activity there, but the port's really interesting. And I remember staying there and taking a wander through the town and finding up on the hillside a couple of like bomb shelters or gun emplacements. And I thought that was really cool because it goes to show a little bit of the history about that area. But the nicest part was walking back down the hill, and I found this guy just outside in his garden tending his bonsai plants, and he must have had maybe 100 of them. And he started talking to me about them, asking me which one I liked, but they were also beautiful. But it's, one of those small towns where people are so friendly and welcoming. Really lovely place. Very quiet.
We have a question from Sean. He says at Ikidane, are the showers 24/7?
Yes, I think they are.
I believe they were, yeah.
I think they are, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we switch to your photos, Paul? And then we'll come back to you,
Sure.
Tina, and of course, feel free to comment along the way as well. You want to start with Hashihama Port?
So do you have the map image?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. You got that one? So
Okay,
this is
got it.
you can look down over the Kuroshima Straits and the huge 4-kilometer long suspension bridge there. So you can see on this map that's the bridge is stretching across the straits there, and just at below the entrance to the Shimanami Kaido, below the entrance to that bridge on the Imabari side, there's a tiny little port called Hashihama, and from there you can do a really nice little island hopping trip. on the ferries there. So there's about the ferries run from this little port to 3 tiny islands, and then return back to the port. And there's about I think it's 5 or 6 departures every day. So if you time it right, you can take the ferry over to the first island, stay on the island for an hour or so, then go the ferry to the next island, and so on, and make your way around. And the ferries are really small, and they're used mostly by the very small population on the islands, and people going for fishing and stuff. So they're quite small, but you can put your bike on there. So I've done it a couple of times, and I've taken my bike along, and they're always a little bit surprised when I show up, but they let me on. They're very friendly, and you take the boat across to the first island. It's tiny. It's only 800 meters around in circumference, the island. It's an old it's an old I'm going to say they're often described as pirates, but they're more of a seafaring samurai clan. So it used to be one of the strongholds. It used to be a fort, so there's no remains really of the fort left, but you can climb up to the top of the hill to where the fort once stood, and you get a great view, and there's some lovely little tiny paths and stuff, and there's people, there's hardly anyone lives there, but you'll get like the ferry people will drop off the local newspapers and the post before heading off to the next place. And then once you come down and go on to the next island is called Oshima, different from the Oshima. This is a small Shima, so Oshima there, and the views are just beautiful going across from island to island, and it only takes about 5 minutes between each island. And then on Oshima, that's another historical island. It's another fort, but this one's from the Meiji era, dates from just before the Russia-Japan War, so the beginning of the 20th century, so late 19th century. So on at the top of those at the top of the islands was where the gun battlements and stuff were, and you can walk around the ruins. There's quite a big complex of ruins, of military ruins up there. So that kind of shows another different side of the Shimanami history and how it was so strategically important. And again, great views. And then also a nice surprise on the back side of the island, on the opposite side from the port, just these incredible white sand beaches. Just really, really amazing. And I don't know if it's because of the fast flow of the water that you get around there, but there's both times I've been, there's virtually no trash whatsoever, nothing at all, which in this part of Japan is kind of unusual to have a completely trash-free beach. So it's just beautiful. The water looks beautiful. Okay, and then the final island is called Umashima.
Before we move on, you have pictures of wakame. Can you just see that as you're cycling around Oshima?
So that one is that Kuroshima or Oshima?
Oshima.
Right. So that one, I had a nice picture of the old lady putting out the wakame, but she told me not to take a photo, so I decided not to show it today. But there's only like one house on the island, and that was when I visited during the winter. It was pretty cold, and it was winter season. So yeah, they were, and I took my bike on the boat, but both Oshima and Kuroshima, there's really nowhere to cycle. It's all small paths that you walk, right?
Okay, next, Umashima.
Umashima, so the horse island, right? It's the last island on this little boat trip. And Umashima is really interesting. It's got some lovely beaches. It's got a nice little lighthouse, a small collection of houses below the bridge. And if you walk through, you can find some nice caves. And again, great views. And they've also, we're talking about accommodation options in the Imabari area. And just, I think in July, a new hotel, kind of resort type hotel, opened on Umeshima, and it's called Glamp Rook, which is it's kind of a little bit of a strange name, but it's really impressive. They've done a great job of renovating I don't know what the facility was before, but they've used an existing building and really renovated it really nicely, and it's quite high-end accommodation with beautiful rooms, nice restaurant, beautiful, well-appointed rooms with great views, and even the views from the baths in the rooms, it's just incredible. You can see out to the Kuroshima Bridge, and over the bridge, out to the beach. So it's right in front of the beach there. And they also have, as well as the hotel rooms, they've got a nice glamping setup. That's maybe where the glamp comes from in the name. So, and they're really well done. And it looks like a lovely place to if you wanted to have a little weekend break or a couple of days escape. It's a really good option. A little bit higher priced, but if you're in Japan and you can use GoTo travel campaign, it could be pretty reasonable. And they also offer a transport service by boat from Imabari port, or if the weather's rough, they will send a taxi to pick you up. But then the real interesting thing I always think about Umeshima is if you're doing this little island hopping trip, the way you will get back is you don't take the ferry back, you take your bike and you head to the bridge tower that stands on Umeshima Island, and you can get back up to the bridge in an elevator that runs from the ground of the island, and it goes all the way up, takes you back up to the bridge. I don't know how high, but it's quite a high thing. I think Joy's got a little video of it.
I'm looking for it now.
So it's a pretty cool thing to do, though.
Yeah.
It's I think a lot of people probably ride along there and totally miss that elevator.
Right. It's really fun. I have noticed that, I mean, if you notice when you cycle across the bridge, there is no access for cars unless you live on the island, and there's a big sign saying locals only. So you can only really access it by elevator on foot or by bicycle. And there's not a lot on the island, but it's a nice little detour. It's kind of interesting. They ask you to be respectful of the local people, and they kind of prefer you not to go into the little village streets if possible. So if you're just visiting, they prefer you to stay down by the beach, by the hotel, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's great fun. And so it's 4 kilometers long. So there's if you're a beginner cyclist, it's a really nice distance to try out. And on a good day, the views from the Kuroshima Bridge are really, really nice. You see the iconic curling cycle road that takes you down to Oshima, or then if you cycle across to the observation tower that overlooks the bridge, you get some great views from there. And you can also stay. There's accommodation at that end of the bridge, or it's I guess it's about 7 kilometers maybe. Cycle back into Imabari city centre.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people forget about the Imabari or Ehime area is that I think particularly for people visiting first time to the Shimanami, they think of Shimanami being the one and only route, and they start at Onomichi, head to Imabari and then turn around and come back, when in fact there is so much more to explore in that whole area. And I think particularly Imabari is really a gateway to a lot of those little islands and certainly ferries over to Tobishima, and part of the Ehime, of course, is Kamijima and Yugijima, and those islands as well are really beautiful to explore, much smaller and much quieter. In fact, I think is it Kamijima has some incredible hills to climb. Again, some spectacular views and the most awesome bagel shop in the entire world, of course, at Kitchen 313. It's worth doing the hills just to get the bagels.
So like Kamijima is great, isn't it? Because if you go with even small kids, they're a great, easy, pretty flat, easy routes. But then if you want some more of a challenge, I think it's Yugejima where the bagel shop is. The normal beginner course is very flat, but once you hit the other side of the island, it's a real roller coaster, right? It's
it sure is,
a real challenge, and the views again are incredible. So it's worth, for the more serious cyclist perhaps, or masochist perhaps. Definitely I would definitely recommend it. Yeah.
I think it's one that you definitely need to make sure you've got all the gears on your bike that you can possibly have.
That's right. It's also interesting you said about, people see the blue line Shimanami as the whole thing. When you mentioned Hakata Island earlier, if you just do the blue line, you're only on Hakata Island for 3-4 kilometers.
Yes.
Just skirt at the edge, right? So, and then if you take a little extra time, it's what, maybe 20 kilometers to do a loop?
Probably, yeah.
And you were mentioning some of the places there, but there's also another mountain viewpoint up there. Hirakiyama is the name of that. It's a 2 or 3 kilometer climb, not as tough and as hard as Kiro, but it is a challenge. And I visited there in beginning of April this year, and the sakura cherry blossoms up there are absolutely incredible. The whole mountaintop is covered in them.
Yeah.
That's a real beautiful spot.
Yeah. There's lots to be explored there, and so many little islands that it's one of those places where every corner you turn, there's a new surprise in front of you. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to talk about this area? It doesn't look like we talked about the coffee caravan yet, Tina.
Oh, yeah, the coffee caravan. Yeah, that's one of my favorite places. So that's just near the Tatara Cyclist Sanctuary, just before, if you're coming along the Shimanami from the Onomichi end, it's before Tatara, but obviously the other way, coming from Imabari. It would be after the Tatara Cyclist Sanctuary. It's on the top of the hill, so instead of taking the turn to go straight back down the hill to Tatara, there's a little turn off, and if you miss it, you'll miss the caravan.
That's right.
If you want a coffee or a beautiful, beautiful Satuchi lemonade, that's the place to stop. So it's a vintage caravan, and he's basically got it set up on this incredible little view spot, and looks down over the water, and you can just sit there sipping your lemonade to your heart's content. It's fabulous.
It's called Shimanami Coffee. Is the name of the business. And it's, like Tina said, you do have to take a little strange turn to get there, but it is easy to spot. So you probably notice if you've missed it. You'll see it, and then suddenly you won't see it anymore, and you'll know to turn back and try again. But yeah, it's a great place to stop. And the coffee, at least, is, I know in the summer the iced coffee was roasted and supplied by Omishima Coffee, which is on Omishima Island, and then I think the hot coffee was roasted in Matsuyama, so they keep it nice and local, and it's really good. It's a great place to stop off.
Yeah, definitely. And so that leads you into, of course, Tatara, which I think we talked about also last time, which is where the famous cyclist sanctuary sign is that looks across the Tatara Bridge, and there's a great rest stop there with there's toilets and showers, and there's lots of takeaway food, Japanese style takeaway food. So if you're expecting Western style, you won't get it, but all kinds of treats, which are really tasty and perfect cycling food. But they also have a shop for local goodies and omiyage. So if you're looking for souvenirs, I think I mentioned last time, it's one of the few places you'll actually find them.
Yeah. And the if you like seafood, the seafood like platters there are incredibly cheap and super fresh in the restaurant there.
Yeah. So and further down the road from there, so further down the road from Tatara, of course, is the Ikedane Hostel, but further along again is Waka, which we mentioned. And Waka's a new facility there, which is basically the cycle taxi. So if you get into trouble, you can call the guys from Waka and they'll come and pick you up and transport you and your bikes very comfortably to where you need to be. They've also got accommodation and food and hostel style, I think, as well as cabins.
Yeah. They have glamping style tents, cabins, and a dormitory type thing. And also they've got an incredible terrace cafe now, which serves light food, and you can get drinks and chill out. Wi-Fi. So that's definitely a good place to stop off.
Yeah, I'm dying to see it finished. I saw it when it was being built. So.
Right. Yeah, it looks incredible. Yeah. They're doing a great job.
We had a lot of comments about the glamping when that happened. So we said, that's amazing from Sean. Alicia, that glamping looks fabulous. Carrie is saying, wow, Sean, so lovely. I love that. Carrie also says, great info, loving it. Can you tell us a bit about pricing or booking? Like, how would people book that glamping accommodation?
That one, I would look up Glamprook. I'm sure it will come up pretty high in the Google search. I'm not sure there's many other places using that name. So it's Glamprook, as in the rook in the chess set. So I would look it up there, and you could probably book through their website. And I'm sure they're on things like Booking.com. If you're in Japan, I think you can access the go-to campaign deals fairly easily through Booking.com. Otherwise, it's quite a lot. You have to wrestle with quite a lot of Japanese. But I think Booking.com makes it a little easier to use those. You might find it's quite busy at the weekends because it's one of those kind of places that people are using the go-to campaign to go somewhere they might not usually be able to afford.
That's great. Alicia also says the Waka taxi service is excellent. Warm towels in the car, Wi-Fi, and chargers for phones.
Yeah, those guys they really know what they're doing.
Yeah, they sure do. It's just such a great business idea.
Now, Tina,
and such lovely guys.
Yeah, Tina, you wanted to talk more about bike packing?
Yeah, so after the last session, I had a few questions about the bike packing thing that came after the session with, people wondering more about how do I get my bike to Japan? What sort of case should I take? And what's this bag you're talking about I need to have on the trains? And so just to be clear about that, taking your bike to Japan, and we talked about this last time, isn't as easy as a lot of people think, mainly because logistically, transporting your bike in a huge bike case from one place to the other is a little bit tricky. It's not simply a case of putting it in a taxi, because sometimes the taxis look at it and just say, I'm not taking that in my car, it's too big. And if you're hopping on the Shinkansen or bullet train, you have to be sure that you can get that last row behind the last row of seats to put your bag. But of course, since the Olympics were going to happen, there's new rules in place on the Shinkansen for large luggage that you take on. So you have to book those spaces now, and there's a fee that comes with that. And if you don't get those spaces, your bike is likely to go into another carriage on the train. And so, of course, if you're headed to, say from Tokyo to Hiroshima, and you have to jump off at Hiroshima, you've got all of, 40 seconds to get off the train and go and grab your bag from another carriage. And I can't see that happening. I think that would be really difficult.
It's quite stressful. I've done it.
Yeah. So, you can transport your bikes other ways. In the past, what we did, we actually organised our bike transport through a company who specifically transports bikes around the country in their cases, and they'll pick your bike in the case up from your accommodation and take it to the next place. But the issue is it doesn't arrive the same day or the next day. It's always the day after that. And so if in fact, we were stuck in, we were headed to Mount Fuji and to do some cycling there. And we'd sent our bikes from Tokyo to Mount Fuji. And we kind of wasted a day, and 2 days, in fact, of not cycling because we had to wait for our bikes to arrive. Then we did our cycling, and then we had to pack them up a day before we left to get them to Hiroshima in time to meet us in Hiroshima. So they're not always as convenient as you think. They also come at a price. They're pretty expensive, but sometimes it's really the best option rather than struggling with carrying, your backpack and your bike case and anything else you might have to do it that way. The other thing people asked me about was the bags that you take on the local trains. And in Japan, it's called a Rinpo Bag. And it's interesting because I'd never seen those anywhere other than Japan. And when I tried to buy one in Australia, nobody had heard of it. Nobody even knew what it was. And when I described this nylon bag that you just put your bike in to carry it around like this, they were amazed that there was such a thing. So if you want to buy one because you're thinking about traveling to Japan, in fact, I think it's a must to have one, because if you're out cycling and you do get stuck and you want to hop on the train, you can't just take your bike on. You have to have it put inside a Rinpo bag. And so the best thing to do is, as soon as you arrive in Japan, just hot foot it to the local department store, sports department, and you'll probably find one there. They come in different types. The Rinpo bags can either suit a bike when you take both wheels off, and sometimes the handlebars as well, and it just turns into a fairly compact shape. Other ones you only need to take the front wheel off. They're not as convenient, but if you're not as good at or not as comfortable about taking your wheels off and putting them back on, they're probably a better option. And you must have your saddle and everything covered up, but as soon as it's covered, you're allowed to hop on the train. So
it's like Tina said, they are actually and become increasingly so strict about that. And if you don't, because in theory it's possible to wrap your entire bike in, say, a polythene sheet or something like that, but you'll get some pretty unhappy looks from your fellow travelers and stuff. So it's a good idea to comply. And there are people who there are some like little Twitter hashtag campaigns against people carrying their bikes on public transport. So you do have to be careful of that. So it is well worth doing that. And as you say, even if you're planning to bike the whole way of your whole route, if you have trouble, it's a great option to have, to be able to get on a train, or even I often put mine in the luggage of a highway bus. So that's good.
Okay, we have some comments. Carrie says, yikes, good to know. Sean says, if you take the first train locally in the countryside, at least in Tokushima, they don't seem to notice. I lugged it, the first seat next to me, no issue. Hint, get one that fits your bike. Mountain bike works well for everything. A bit loose but safe. So if you choose the mountain bike size, I guess it's bigger. Carrie says, I've heard the rental bike shops are super helpful.
Yeah, so I think that's a really, really good point from Sean to make sure it fits. I've been with people who've been trying to get their gravel bikes fitting inside a road bike bag, and it can actually be a bit tricky. So the Rinpo bags, I'd go for the biggest you can find, regardless of what you're after.
And then Alicia has a question for you, Sean. How early is the first train? Does anybody know? Maybe we'll hear from Sean later. But
so
I think they start about 5, right?
Sorry, the other thing I wanted to mention was the questions I'd had about taking your bikes overseas in a bike case was, should I have a soft case or a hard case? And having just been speaking to somebody maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago who had their beautiful $8,000 carbon bike crushed in a soft bag from traveling overseas, I think I'd be wanting to have a hard case anytime I travel internationally with my bike. They're probably less convenient just from the point of view that they're bigger and heavier, but the protection on most of them for your bike is pretty good. The soft cases are great because you can fold them up and store them, you know, in a backpack sometimes. They're really good like that. But yeah, the hard cases I think would be my preference. The one that I use is pretty cool because it's actually got a little work stand in it as well. So when you're taking the bike apart, you can sit it on a stand and do it that way. And if you've got any issues with your bike, it can use the little stand. So yeah.
That's good.
And I've always
to add in, Sean has said 5:45 a.m. from Tokushima to Takamatsu. Thank you, Sean.
Nice. So I've actually always, on about the bike cases, I've always traveled with my bike inside a cardboard bike box from the bike store, wrapped up, and it's more difficult to do that because a lot of more airlines these days won't take that. Most airlines used to take that fine. The only time I had a problem was going to Hawaii Ironman. We arrived in Hawaii, and part of my Dura-Ace derailleur had cracked, so I had to get them shipped in before the race. But other than that, everything's been fine.
Sean also says if the size is within ANA standards, there is no charge for the bike on ANA.
Right. Yeah. ANA are good. Probably the one to go with, I'd say.
You need to check airline to airline is different, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a few issues with that, with flying into Japan with Qantas and then connecting flight using, say, JAL, because the size differences for each airline, it differs. And so there's no guarantees that your bike case or box will fit one airline or the other. And sometimes you can be hit with the excess baggage. So you really need to check that out very carefully. The bikes themselves can travel as free, theoretically, as sports equipment, but as soon as you head outside that weight limit or like the weight limit you're allowed as a single traveller or the size limit, then that's when the excess baggage rules start to apply. So it can be expensive.
Paul, you wanted to mention the cycling Rogaining?
Oh, yeah, just a little shout out to Shimanami, Japan. So at this time of year, usually there's the big across Shimanami cycle event, right?
Tomorrow, I think.
It was supposed to be, yeah?
Yeah.
And because of Corona, the problems we're having, it's been cancelled this year. So in its place, they've create this cycle Rogaining event. I don't know how many people know about Rogaining, but it's kind of like orienteering in a way. You cycle from point to point and pick up points for each place you go to. So they're running this event over an entire month, and it starts today, and it runs until November 23rd. And there's something like 250 checkpoints that you can check into and pick up points when you visit. And then if you go to somewhere and you do something, or you buy something, or you use a service, you get bonus points. And then I think at the end of the month, top point winners will get some prizes, and there's lucky prizes, spot prizes and stuff. It's because of Corona and to reduce contact. It's run through a free app. So you download the app and use that. Now, unfortunately, the app is all in Japanese, so it's kind of hard work if you don't read Japanese. But if you're in Japan and you're thinking about traveling to Shimanami and you want to improve your reading skills, then why don't you give it a go? It's I think, are you showing the graphic of the?
Yeah.
The app, yeah. So it's if you look at the Visit Shimanami Japan Facebook page, the most recent post, it describes about where you can download the app. It's the Getters app. I'm not sure who Larry is, but you can take part in the stamp rally.
Alicia says, how cool it would be if they had Rogaining every year.
Yes, well, I think they're quite excited about trying this because the idea is to get because it's a not kind of, you win prizes, but it's a non-competitive way, and you can do as few checkpoints or as many as you like. So it's a great inclusive event, I think. So it'd be lovely if it happened more often, more regularly. Perhaps they could run both events, or it could be a side event I'd like to see a Shimanami week-long cycling festival. That's in the future. I think Shimanami has the potential to become that kind of hub for building bicycle culture in Japan.
Yeah, but I think also this Rogaining event is a great way for the two governments, Ehime and Hiroshima, to actually let people explore the other area outside the blue line a little bit more. It's a great idea.
Yeah, awesome. And one thing I noticed after our last talk when we went to Onomichi for cycling was how long the lines were for rentals. So if you are going to rent a bike, make sure you book in advance and get there early, even if you book, because you might have to wait in a long line.
Yeah, if you go on a day like this, a beautiful day and it's a weekend, you might find it's quite busy, or a national holiday. Normal days of the week, it's you'll find it not too bad, but the bikes could be booked up. But one thing about in Onomichi, even if it says it's booked up online, there's at least 40 bikes available, first come, first serve, every day. So if you get there just after opening, you should be good. Of course, size and choice of style it may be limited, but there are bikes there every day.
Well, great. We have 3 more minutes. Any final thoughts or advice or recommendations from you guys?
Oh, I just think people need to get out there and explore it. It's such a magical place to go, and I'm so looking forward to being back there. We're getting closer every day in Melbourne to freedom. So, but it's probably a way to discover, as I said last time, the real Japan. It's not the bright flashing lights and consumerism that you see in Tokyo. It's really people living the way they live and welcoming you the way they welcome you, in such a beautiful and friendly way. I always feel indebted to the people in Onomichi and along the Shimanami because they're just so lovely and welcoming and friendly.
And Sean says, we are waiting for you. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, I want to get down to Tokushima as well.
Yeah.
All right, 2 more minutes. Any final questions or comments, please add them. I'm showing such beautiful pictures you both sent for this week. Views of the bridges, views of the islands. Any favorite views along the way that we've talked about today you guys could leave us with?
Oh, definitely off Kuro-san would have to be one of my favorite views, but also just sometimes just riding around the coast road when you're right at water's edge and there's a sleepy little fishing village. It's beautiful just to stop and sit and watch and look and take it all in and enjoy the moment.
Yeah, there are so many beautiful places just to stop, and you could, if you're not careful, you can be only halfway done and it's already going dark because
exactly.
You get relaxed, right?
Oh, look, there's another temple. Oh, look, there's another woman selling fruit. Let's stop. Let's have a chat with her too. Yeah. So, there's just so many great things to do along the Shimanami, but also on the other islands as well. Yeah.
I remember stopping not far from Onomichi once I was Mukaishima, taking a picture of the Red Bridge, the first one that you see, and a bunch of cyclists going past said, "You're going to see lots of them. Keep going, keep going." That was like, I'm not going far today. Leave me alone.
Yeah, especially as you get more tired, right?
Yeah.
Carrie says it all looks amazing. Thank you guys for sharing your thoughts. Thanks, Carrie. And Mary says we have decided to save for a trip there. I can't wait. Awesome. Mary. Great to hear. And that's our hour. Thank you both so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you for all your questions and comments. It was awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Joy. And thanks for all the questions and comments. That was great. It was nice.
Yeah,
Thank
really
you.
good.
It was great,
So
to, great
we're
to be
gonna
here talking about it again.
we're gonna try to do it again next month.
Let's keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, why not?
Once a month. So we'll start number 3 in November sometime. Yeah.
Send in the questions now.
That's
What
a
do
good
you wanna
idea.
hear?
Anything
Good
you want to
idea.
know about, yeah, and then we can dig around if we don't know.
And then for the glamping and all the places you mentioned, if we can add links below, that'd be really handy.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Everybody have a great weekend. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.
See you. Bye.